what's red, ancestral, and fiery all over? The Targaryens. So in honor of Game of Thrones coming back to the screens, we decided to make something really red and fiery. So it's time for a red IPA. Welcome back to Flying Wombat TV, the channel where it's all about making fun and creative styles of beer with science and biotechnology involved. So, as we said in the opener, we are going to be making a red IPA today. So, it's going to be deep, robust, spicy, earthy, with heaps of really powerful hoppy flavor coming through it. And we're going to release the recipe for you guys and show you through the whole process. So, come on for the ride and brew on. Alrighty, so quick run through on the ingredients we're going to be using. We've got a fairly complex malt bill going on because that's where the majority of the flavor comes through for a red IPA. So for the base malt, 7.2 kilos of pale ale malt, 1.8 kilos of rye, and then we're going to use 1 kilo each of Aurora, then Supernova, and then Redback, the Holy Trinity. And then lastly, as far as hops go, we're going to use 15 grams of Galaxy hops at the bittering at the start of the hour. Towards the last 5 minutes of the boil, we're going to throw in 70 grams each of Galaxy, Topaz, and Riwaka. And then, as always, we got our little bit of Whirlpooling that's going to go in with 15 minutes left in the boil. As far as yeasties go, we're going to be using S04, so an English strain of yeast. Really great flocculation, fast fermentation time, and a really clean, slightly fruity flavor. So that's what's gonna make up our yeast. And because we are using quite a bit of rye, we are gonna use rice hulls, just to make sure everything sparges properly. Time to get milling. As always, we have our grain mill set to 1 millimeter. Actually, today we have it set to 1.1 millimeters. That in inches. Use what you need to use for your grain mill. Everyone's mill is different, but that's a general good sweet spot to kind of start with to get a decent crush without crushing it too fine. So let's get rolling. Okay, so now we're gonna start mashing in. If this is the first time you're watching one of these videos, or if you're very, very new to brewing, mashing in is just when you throw all the grains into the hot water. So this is gonna be our strike water, and you're just gonna mix up all the grains so they get nice and evenly distributed. That's gonna stick in the water for like an hour. That's gonna extract all the sugars and the enzymes to break down those sugars. It's called strike water because it's what the grain is going to strike the water at. So it's normally set a couple degrees higher than the actual water the temperature you're going to mash in at. Alrighty, let's throw these guys in. And I should have thrown my gloves on. Okay. Now this thing here is just recirculating water, so I'm gonna have this pump on as we mash throughout the brew day, so that it can help keep that water recirculating through all of the grains, help with the extraction potential, as well as making the beer just a little bit clearer, because all these grains will act as a natural filter, helping to just give you a little bit more clarity in your beer. So now it's probably a good time to talk about our grain bill and why we chose what we did choose. So the 7.2 kilos of pale ale malt is just adding, the majority of the base malt flavor, the sugars and the enzymes to break down those sugars in our batch. The 1.8 kilos of rye malt is to give a level of complexity and spiciness. So with a red IPA, you're really leaning towards the malt characteristics, unlike say a NEPA, for example. And we want that rye to really contribute that really spicy and earthy kind of flavor and aroma. Then we've got our Holy Trinity, so our 3 specialty malts that we're using. So Redback, Aurora, and Supernova. So these 3 are specifically made by Gladfield, I believe, and they're made with a very special kilning process to encourage the Maillard reactions to create melanoidin specialty compounds that really lean towards the red hue side of things. So not only are they providing that really deep red color that we're looking for, they also provide the backbone of the sweetness and the mouthfeel and the flavors. So unlike, say, a caramel, which is adding, typical just caramel sweetness, these three are leaning more towards like raisins, dates, fruitcake sort of flavors, like a Christmas pudding type thing. So really rich, really complex sweetness rather than your straight caramel sweetness. And because we're really relying on those three to provide the bulk of the flavor for this beer, we want complexity. So that's why we're using them today. We have a little friend. He wants to get in the beer. Move, B.
It's actually seriously like...
That's a good sign. That's a good omen. It means this beer is going to be yummy.
What? So a dragon's gonna come along. It's like, ooh, good beer. I can smell it from here.
That's how it works, man.
Fire and blood. You're gonna have to sacrifice you or something.
So we finished mashing in. It's time to put our top filter on and start recirculating this wort over the grain bed. So we're gonna mash this at 67 degrees for 1 hour. That's that in imperial units. So we'll see you at the end of that when we're ready to get into the boil. Okay, it's now been 1 hour of mashing and it's time to start sparging. So we're gonna lift up our grain bed, start letting all the water drain through and do our fly sparging. Okay, it's time to start sparging. So we have our boiler coming up to temperature and now we're gonna start fly sparging. So if you come over here, if you are new to brewing, what this basically means is when you sparge, you're putting hot water over top of your grains to help extract any sugars that are still trapped within the grains. That's essentially the gist of it. So it's just about giving you a little bit more efficiency on your brew days. This style of sparging is called fly sparging. Basically just means this water is going to keep overflowing on top of this grain bed. It will keep flowing down into the boiler and, hey presto, you get a little bit of extra sugar inside your wort. So we're just about finishing sparging here. All the sparge water's gone through and the grains have stopped dripping. So we'll just open this up so you guys can have a little bit of a look at what it looks like. So it's, look, it's not really that interesting, but if you are curious about what it should look like by the end of sparging, it's something like this. So all the grain is kind of paler, or like a bit of the color's being drained out of it. And this stuff is now kind of useless to us as brewers. But if you are into baking bread, Breaking Bad. Yeah. If you're into if you're into baking bread, you can use this stuff to make sourdough. If you have cattle, or if you know someone with cattle, you can feed it to pigs, horses, not horses, cows, sheep, and goats. Or you can use it to compost. But if all of that fails and you have no use for it, chuck it out because it's time to get to the boiling step. Cameraman's lost it.
That was a disaster. Don't feed it to horses and don't break bread.
Don't feed it to horses and don't break bread. At the start of the boil now, so time to throw in your bittering hops. That's the 15 grams of Galaxy. So in we go, start your clocks. In 45 minutes, we'll come back to do our Whirlflock tablets. All right, so 45 minutes now, throw in your Whirlflocks, if you're using Whirlflocks, into the boiler. They go. All right, we'll be back with 5 minutes to go and we'll add our flavoring hops.
Cool.
It smells so good. All right, we're at 55 minutes. It's time to throw in our aroma hops. So throw them in. If you got a hop spider, chuck them in there. Hops away. So as we said at the start, that was 70 grams each of Galaxy, Topaz, and Riwaka hops. Yeah, chuck them in, and after 5 minutes of this, it's time to start cooling, and we'll transfer into the fermenter. All right, so a quick interlude on the normal brew day stuff here, geeking out on more the science side of things. So over here, we have our really clear wort. So that's all the more basic sugars and the enzymes acting on those sugars. So predominantly alpha and beta amylase, that's breaking all that stuff down, which is why it's so clear and liquidy. In this weird little middle layer here, where we look like we have this kind of like skin layer, or like this clear opaque sort of lining, that there is all the lipids and fatty oils that have coagulated on top of the surface of the wort. And that's why it's clear. It's fatty oils essentially. And then over to the right, or your left, we have all of these more complex proteins and carbohydrates that are forming this foamy layer. So especially with you know, darker ales, red IPAs, that sort of thing, you get a lot of specialty malts going on, which is why you get so much complexity in the actual biochemical makeup of the liquid that we're working with. So anyway, back to the brew day. So now we've reached the end of our boil hour, so it's time to turn off your power, flame out, you know, whatever it is that you're using to actually supply heat, and time to start doing a whirlpool if you have the means to do a whirlpool, but basically just start cooling down your wort and get it to pitching temperature. So we're gonna activate our pump now. I think I've connected everything right. We'll find out if I haven't. Yes. Well done. Okay, so if you're using a you know, a regular chiller like this one over here, this is an immersion chiller. So basically, you connect your two hoses to either end of this, drop it into your boiler. It'll start cooling it down. This here is a counterflow chiller. If you're using a plate chiller, or if you're just dropping your you know, your pot in a big bucket of ice water. Whatever you're doing to cool it down, start cooling it down now. Get it to pitching temperature, throw it into the fermenter, and then whacking your yeast. So we're now down to pitching temperature. So it's time to start transferring all of your wort into the fermenter, and then we're gonna pitch our yeast. So there we go, got it eventually. Transfer it all over into here, and then you know, it's yeast pitching time. So if you're using packet yeast, throw them in on top at the end. If you're using a you know, a culture like us, throw that in, whatever you're using, get it in there, let it start fermenting, and let it start doing its thing. Alrighty, so we have now transferred all of our wort into the fermenter tank. It's time to transfer all of the yeasties into the tank to do their job. So we're gonna pour all of those in. If you guys are using whatever you're using, throw it in now. Now, we're gonna do a dry hop addition when gravity is almost to completion, so when fermentation's almost done. I'm guessing that's gonna be around day 6 or 7. It could vary depending on the yeast you're using, the temperature, how much yeast you pitched, all that kind of stuff. But when you're thinking that you're about 2 days away from finishing fermentation, that's when you want to dry hop. Also, we are fermenting with Sufale SO4 yeast. So it's best fermented around 18 to tops 19 degrees. So that's what we're going to be fermenting at. 19 degrees for this particular batch. So yeah, at the end of fermentation, remember to do a dacetile rest. So that means raising your temperature of fermentation up by 2 degrees for about 2 days. Alrighty, welcome back guys. So it's now been 2 weeks since our brew day, and it's time to dry hop the tank. So we have 70 grams each of Topaz, Riwaka, and Galaxy hops that are ready to go in here. Once again, as always, you don't need all this fancy stainless steel stuff if you're just fermenting in a bucket or whatever. Open it up, throw your hops in, now's the time. So we did test our gravity, and we've finished at about 1.02. I suspect we might get another couple gravity points out of this over the next day or so as we bump up the temperature by 2 degrees. But we'll see how we go. And that's just to do a diacetyl rest, you know, more on that later, but basically to prevent some of the weird buttery off flavors, we want to bump up the temperature of your fermentation for the last 2 days by about 1 degree or 2 degrees Celsius. Alrighty, so we've got all of our hops in there now. I'm gonna close this thing off. If you are wondering what this is, it's basically a zero oxygen dry hopping component. So you can seal this up and then purge the whole area with CO2 before you actually dump those hops into the tank. So it's just a way to basically make sure that you can do dry hopping without introducing any oxygen, which is pretty cool. So now we're just gonna flush this thing out. Alrighty, so just remember to take a gravity reading as you start getting towards the end of fermentation. So this took about 2 weeks to get to basically the end of fermentation for us, which is a little bit longer than I was expecting it to be honest, but you know, better late than never. Alrighty, that should be good now. Okie dokie. Let's take that off. And as always, hops away. Alrighty, dry hopping done. So we're now going to leave this for one more day. So we started our diacetyl rest yesterday, so we already bumped up the temperature of fermentation to 20 degrees Celsius. It might bump up to 21 for one more day. We're going to leave that for one more day, then we're going to start cold crashing and bringing the temperature right down as close to 0 degrees as possible, letting all the chard and the sediment inside the tank just settle out and help clarify our beer a little bit before we start getting into kegs. So that's a wrap. We're going through the full brew day for the Fire and Blood Red IPA. So, you know, we've done the brew day, the mashing, the lautering, the hopping, blah, 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 blah. Now we've done the dry hopping, and next you'll see us in a week's time for the tasting video for this thing. So, yeah, that'll be cool. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. As always, give us a like and a subscribe if you're feeling generous, and we'll catch you next time. Brew on, guys.